Ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning and welcome to Day 3 of the Redesigning Pedagogy International Conference 2024, Growing Future-Ready Teachers and Learners, Collaborative Research for Educational Change. We are so delighted to have you join us back on the third and final day. What an enriching 2 days it has been. I trust that this platform allowed you to exchange educational and research ideas, as well as broaden your professional networks with delegates around the globe. Without further ado, allow me to go through some housekeeping matters before we begin with the first keynote speech. Delegates, please take some time now to switch your mobile phones to the silent mode. Secondly, as you engage with this morning's keynote speech, please submit your questions to our speakers via AHA Slides by scanning the QR code or going to ahaslides.com and entering the event code RPIC40. Since we won't be able to attend all the parallel sessions, do share your thoughts and experience on your social media with the hashtag RPIC2024. That way, we can all learn together and engage with further discussions. The keynote speech this morning is by Professor Mutlu Cukurova. His talk is entitled Beyond the Hype of AI in Education to Visions for the Future. Professor Cukurova is a professor of learning and artificial intelligence at the University College of London. Professor Cukurova is the director at the UCLED team and collaborates with UNESCO's Unit for Technology and AI in Education as an external expert. His work in organizing leading conferences in the field, including his role as the program co-chair at the International Conference of AI in Education in 2020, showcases his commitment to sharing and evolving knowledge within this area. Ladies and gentlemen, let's put our hands together to welcome Professor Mutlu Cukurova.
All right, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Many thanks for this kind introduction and the honorable invitation. It is an absolute pleasure for me to be here and a privilege at this prestigious Institute of NIE at NTU in Singapore in general. NIE has been a long-term collaborator of my own institute, UCL Institute of Education, and I'm hoping that our long history in collaboration will continue in the future. Thank you very much to all of you who made it to the third day of the conference on a Friday morning, so I very much appreciate your time coming in here. Today, I'm expected to speak of AI and education, and I shall not disappoint you. I tried to make the slides and the talk as engaging as possible with multiple videos. So I'm hoping that you will appreciate that this is not a very much academic talk, but trying to give you a broad introduction to the AI in education and hoping to widen your thinking about AI applications in education broadly. I would like to start by showing you a very short video, as I'm assuming that not everyone has already seen it. Let us start by looking at the state of the art in AI, GPT-4 Omni, and what it can do in math tutoring context as part of this short video.
OpenAI invited myself and my son Imran here to try out some of their new technology. And so we're curious about how good it might be at tutoring someone in math on Khan Academy. So let's get it started. It's loading up. All right, make sure it can see our screen.
Actually, in this format,
hello there. I'm here with my son, and I'd love you to tutor him on this math problem, but don't give him the answer. You can ask questions and nudge him in the right direction, but I really want to make sure he understands it himself. And he's here in the room, so you can talk to him directly.
Of course, I'd be happy to help. Let's look at the problem together. Can you first identify which sides of the triangle are the opposite, adjacent, and hypotenuse relative to angle alpha?
All right, so I'm pretty sure this is the angle alpha right here, right?
Perfect. That's correct. Now, looking at the triangle, which side do you think is the hypotenuse?
I think you got the point. This is multimodal, real-time interaction in maths tutoring. To me, in terms of technological advancements, this is quite impressive. As mentioned by the Honorable Minister at the opening ceremony, we are all living at a time of rapid technological developments. And societies across the globe are grappling with complex questions about the future of education. On the one hand, AI solutions are considered as strategic investments to support student learning and teaching practices. At the same time, AI's use in education threatens human agency, risks privacy and security protection of teachers and learners, and it has already been deepening some of the long-standing systemic inequalities in our education systems. So for all of us, this appears to be a pivotal moment to get together as scientists, practitioners, and policymakers to envision a future of education that is aligned with our societal values and ensure that AI is used responsibly to deliver this vision. So what do we call AI these days anyway? Significant amount of excitement is coming from the recent advancements in generative pre-trained transformers, all the GPTs. These are models that are pre-trained on a very large scale data set of web crawl information often, which is used as input in tokens to a transformer architecture. The inputs, for example, masked out words or paired sentences, are processed, and the model is optimized to reconstruct the original text through iterative cycles of forward passing, loss function calculation, backpropagation, and weight updates of the model in order to be able to predict the most likely next token. In essence, GPTs have four main components. Token embeddings representing input in multidimensional vector space with matrices. Attention mechanisms is calculating the relationship of the tokens as input. Then, multi-layer perceptron models with trillions of parameters are updating the weights, and unembeddings of the tokens for the predicted output. These pre-trained models are often then further fine-tuned in order to be able to use them in more specific tasks with approaches like reinforcement learning with human feedback. And in essence, as most of the applications of modern AI today, this is what we are calling an artificially intelligent tool. Now, many of you in the audience today are practitioners. You might be thinking, I'm an educator, I'm a teacher. Why is he telling us these? Why do we need to know the details of how these models actually work? But it matters. It matters because when we think about AI in these terms, it does not really cover all the terms that we would use when we talk about human intelligence. Intelligence is a complex and multifaceted concept that expands beyond commonly considered cognitive capacities, and it includes emotional and social components, acknowledging that intelligence is not just about how well one reasons, but also about how well one interacts with the world and others in it. It is not only about what is certain, what is decontextualized, disembodied, and reduced to its parts as tokens so that it is predictable and controlled. It is also about understanding things that are fluid, about the ability to live with and survive despite of uncertainty. It is understanding that what we are seeing as parts in tokens may indeed be wholes at yet another level. Lack of these considerations is one of the reasons large language models are sometimes referred to as stochastic parrots. Stochastic in the sense that they generate content based on probability analysis, and parrot because they appear to have no understanding of any of the content they are actually generating. Yet this is not a competition. Humans are very good at many things that today's AI is very poor at, and AI is good at some other tasks. This is not to say that humans are more intelligent than AI or vice versa. We are just differently abled. When we start thinking about artificial intelligence in these broad terms, recognizing the differences between human and artificial intelligence, it becomes clear that considering AI just as an applied tool is only one part of a much bigger picture. AI can be conceptualized to externalize, be internalized, or extend human cognition. As the first conceptualization in the externalization of cognition, certain human tasks are defined, modeled, and replaced by AI as a tool. This is most of the tools that we are seeing today. In the second conceptualization, AI models can be used to help humans change their representation of thought through the internalization of these models. And at last, AI models can be used to extend human cognition as part of a tightly coupled human and AI systems in which the emergent intelligence is synergistic. That is, it is expected to be more than the sum of each agent's intelligence. If we try to map these conceptualizations on the coordinates of Schneiderman's human control and agency versus automation through AI, perhaps most traditional educational technology could be considered to have very low allowance on human agency and very low automation built into them. With the initial proliferation of AI in education, many researchers had this ambitious goal of creating systems that are as perceptive as human teachers. Through the automation of certain tutoring behaviors, this led to significant development in areas like intelligent tutoring systems. And we are observing very similar hypes today with foundational models and their ability to replace certain teaching tasks. For instance, in teacher-facing interfaces, these models are considered as better search engines for information retrieval for teachers. So an opportunity to ask questions directly to the model rather than searching for information through the web. In addition, these models have significant advancements in terms of the NLP tasks compared to more traditional machine learning approaches. This allows significant opportunities for teachers to use these tools in order to be able to automate certain tasks of their everyday life practice. These are some of the tasks from Canmigo tool, in which the teachers can use the model to help them with their lesson planning, creating examples, applications that connect classroom thinking into real-world contexts, generating questions to encourage discussions, generating assessment questions, lesson hooks, or learning objectives. These are potentially very useful tools for teachers to gain some productivity in their everyday life practice. However, education is different than many other contexts in the sense that oftentimes productivity gains in what people can do is not necessarily the only goal or the primary goal of engaging in an activity. This is particularly the case for learners. When students are engaged in a task, learning from the experience of engaging in the activity is often the main goal rather than completion of the task. Therefore, the productivity gains in completing the task matters less. Currently, there is significant interest and investment from the leading AI developers on developing student-facing AI tutors, such as Google's LearnLM tutor. I would like you to have a 30-second video and see what is the vision of OpenAI's Sam Altman on this particular front.
I met with a new company this morning, or barely even a company, it's like 2 people that are gonna work on a summer project, trying to actually finally make the AI tutor. And I've always been interested in this space. A lot of people have done great stuff on our platform, but if someone can deliver like the way that you actually like, they used a phrase I love, which is this is gonna be like a Montessori level reinvention for how people learn things.
Yeah.
But if you can like find this new way to like let people explore and learn in new ways on their own, I'm personally super excited about that.
Now, I very much appreciate the ambition, particularly coming from these world-leading influential companies. But to me, two people working on a summer project to make an AI tutor for Montessori level reinvention for how people learn things is naive at best and dangerous for the future of education at worst. AI has been formally studied for over 40 years, and the community produced many successful student-facing tools that adapt to the individual needs of mastery and needs of each student, tailoring the content, pacing, and feedback accordingly. Here, you can see some of the early examples from the community. Even though these tools have been traditionally focusing on pedagogical task automation in digital environments, they can also work with data from physical spaces and can also focus on a range of affective and engagement tasks. Here is an example of a system that we built using multimodal data to detect students' engagement states while they are working with an intelligent tutoring system. The system processes data from students' heart rate, seat pressure, and facial recognition to model students' levels of awakeness and aims to provide suggestions for resting or adapts or adjusts the content accordingly. These systems are also not limited to human-generated educational content, but can also be delivered with AI-generated synthetic media. In our experimental research investigating the potential of using AI-generated synthetic media to be able to create educational content, we have observed no statistically significant differences in terms of the learning gains and the learner experience between the two conditions of students learning from a recorded human lecture versus from an AI-generated synthetic media that delivers the same content. Such tutoring systems are great. They seem to be working very well for various domains and knowledge acquisition tasks. There is indeed good evidence, both at the individual studies levels, but also at the meta-reviews levels, that these systems can achieve impact in the delivery of knowledge acquisition, particularly for the subjects of maths, language learning, and algebra, three most popular subjects that have been studied. Now, considering these systems are not necessarily new, and the evidence about their effectiveness is not necessarily new, one question to ponder for all of us is why they have not been prevalent in mainstream education for long years. Well, there are numerous factors influencing the adoption of AI in education that are much broader than the effectiveness of the specific AI technology we are studying in our experiments. These include, but are not limited to, policy landscape, institutional governance, pedagogical culture, technological infrastructure, and social support mechanisms provided to teachers. In our recent research, working with over 800 teachers, looking at the factors that are influencing the adoption of AI in schools, we observed that although AI tool-related factors were indeed important, they were not necessarily the most important factors in the adoption of AI technologies in schools. Not generating any additional workload, teachers' knowledge of and confidence in using AI, increasing teacher ownership, generating support mechanisms for help when needed, and assuring that ethical issues are minimized were also essential for AI to make real-world impact. So we should never forget that the tools we are working on are not closed engineering systems, but are part of a large socio-technical ecosystem, and many factors will influence their adoption in the real world. Second, evidence of impact that is observed in research studies tend to disappear once the facilitation and orchestration of technology is left to the hands of real-world teachers. These results highlight the importance of improving teachers' competencies in the use of AI for any AI intervention to show real-world impact. The key distinctions between AI and traditional information and communication technologies necessitate the definition of a specific set of competencies for teachers. This demands a stronger emphasis on the competencies that are related to human agency, ethical considerations, critical thinking, and human-centered pedagogical design in human-AI interactions in teaching and learning environments. It is not only about teaching some of the foundational knowledge to teachers and giving them skills to use a tool. It is much broader than this. This is, for instance, the final version of the AI competency framework for teachers from UNESCO that I have been working on. As can be seen, AI foundations and applications is only one of the 5 main aspects. For AI to make real-world impact, we should support teachers' AI competency development a lot more holistically than we are currently thinking about. Third, AI in education, particularly as part of approaches, pedagogical approaches like pedagogy for one, can be very powerful. But sometimes these approaches are argued to potentially dehumanize education and learning. When AI in education is considered in a very narrow sense as lonely individual learners working on their own with an AI system, this might indeed lead learners to prioritize information gathering and declarative knowledge acquisition over tacit knowledge and wisdom which comes through rich experiences in the real world. Particularly if these approaches are considered as a replacement to human interactions with each other and with the real world, then the knowledge that comes through experience and practical acquisition of an embodied skill can be replaced with tokens of representations that are far off the actual construct that we want to develop. Learning is not only about absorbing information, and let us do not forget, education is not only about learning. On the other hand, these technologies can also be used as opportunities for increasing students' interaction with adults and with each other in schools. Let's have a quick look at one of these attempts.
As artificial intelligence tools like online chatbots become more prevalent, some schools are figuring out how to bring those tools into the classroom.
One private school in Austin isn't just letting students use those tools, it's relying on them to teach core subjects. KVU's Darrenisha Heron explains.
A school with no teachers? It sounds like a nightmare, but Mackenzie Price, the co-founder of Alpha Private School, says it's actually the wave of the future.
What we do have is a lot of adults who are in the room engaging with these kids, working as coaches. So they're helping the kids get clear on what are some goals that they're working on? What are they doing academically?
So how do they learn? The students work one-on-one with artificial intelligence for 2 hours at the start of the day.
So essentially, rather than spending 8 hours in the classroom, these students are spending 2 hours of their days working with an AI tutor for content acquisition and spend the rest of their school day developing lifelong learning skills through interaction with peers and adults in the real world. So the success of AI in education and any particular pedagogical approach will be highly dependent upon the specific instructional design and learning design in which these tools are embedded. It is not only about the tool itself. But such an approach would actually, I'll go back one more slide. But such an approach would actually require significant innovation in our education systems, including our assessment structures. As in the case we watched, if students spend 6 hours of their time in developing lifelong learning skills, then we should be focusing on our assessment and supporting of these particular lifelong learning skills. AI applications can indeed be detrimental if they are used to automate bad practices of education systems. In the UK, when we speak to teachers and students, we observe that a lot of them expect AI to automate the current assessment structures. So in a dystopian future, we might end up in a situation where students use AI to write their assignments, teachers use AI to assess these assignments, and although AI is very heavily used in education systems, nobody actually learns and nobody actually gets the satisfaction of flourishing a person. Although most skills and competencies we are interested in and expect people to develop through education in modern societies are process-driven, They tend to be evaluated and assessed through the outcomes of these processes. We need to move towards innovations in our education assessment structures that encourage process evaluations rather than outcome evaluations only. Essay writing, for instance, is most often assigned not because the resulting essay has much value to us, but because the process of writing an essay has significant benefit to teach students crucial skills. Regulation of one's own behaviors to engage in a topic that is assigned to them. Researching a topic, judging claims' accuracy, synthesizing knowledge, and expressing it in a clear, coherent, and persuasive manner. These skills should be the focus of assessment, not only the final product of what has been produced. This is the kind of example of innovation that we need in our education systems for AI to make real-world positive impact. In my own teaching, I also have essay submissions as assignments. For the last few years, in addition to traditional content feedback on students' writings, we have been providing students with personalized behavioral feedback based on their writing engagement analytics using data from their online word processing platforms like Word or Google Doc. When students are engaged with their essay writing activities, we are collecting data on their time, their content edits, their space of writing, and the extent to which they monitor and regulate the goals that they set up to themselves in their essays. Based on these, we send students a feedback email with key suggestions on how they can improve their engagement and performance. It is always fascinating to observe the impact of such interventions in my own teaching. They do not appear to be working very well for highly engaged, successful students because they already know what to do, but they seem to be boosting significantly those students who are struggling and were initially predicted to fail. At last, a significant amount of work is still needed to address socio-psychological barriers in the use of AI in education. Teachers and learners tend to have confirmation biases and unrealistic expectations from AI in education. A few years ago, in our research, we showed that when people are presented with content framed as coming from AI, they were judging it as less credible and less trustworthy compared to the same content framed as products coming from educational psychology or neuroscience. Similar results are now emerging when AI-generated content or feedback is sent to students. They tend to judge its quality lower and trust it less if they know that the feedback or content is coming from AI. There is emerging work in this space focusing on how do we measure and gain teachers' trust in AI in education, but considerably more research is needed in this space to optimize end users' trust. Therefore, based on the lessons learned from decades-long research in AI in education, I assert that AI tools alone are very unlikely to democratize or revolutionize education. I say very unlikely, putting my doubtful researcher hat on. But I can be more confident to say that despite people like Sam Altman's expectations, it is not going to happen as a result of two people working on a summer project. Change in education systems is likely to happen gradually, and we, as key stakeholders, perhaps can steer it towards a particular direction that is intentional, evidence-informed, and human-centered. So far, I have been talking about this conceptualization of AI as a tool because this is the mainstream currently, most of the work that is happening. However, AI in education can also be conceptualized as computational models of learning phenomena for humans to internalize and change their representation of thought. These lead to relatively low automation systems that allow high human agency and control. So, although everyone comes to a learning situation with their own mental model of what success looks like, as well as the models that learners hold about themselves, we can use data and computational models to create what success looks like within these remits of computational approaches, and present these models back to people to trigger them to change and refine their mental models. For the last decades or so, we have been working with my team at UCL, focusing on open-ended learning environments and trying to design analytics and AI solutions that would support teachers and learners in these constructivist learning environments. For instance, we were investigating students who were engaged in solving open-ended design problems and have been collecting multiple modalities of data in order to be able to model their collaborative interactions. Now, if we take the first conceptualization of AI, using AI as a tool, we can use these kinds of data to build machine learning classifications of success in these learning environments. First, using these different modalities of data, one can calculate various input measures as independent variables. Then you can ask teachers, researchers, and experts to use existing rubrics on evaluation or existing learning scientists' frameworks in order to be able to label groups' competence. So you have multimodal measures of potentially relevant variables as input and the labeled competencies of groups as the ground truth output. Then it becomes a machine learning problem of building reliable and accurate classification and regression models for the tasks of predicting competence classes or scores. Oftentimes, the ultimate goal of such prediction models is to generate some kind of a dashboard for teachers or input to an agent. The goal is to directly intervene in the practice based on these predictions. Here, you can see an example of an MMLA system for teachers to help them prioritize and structure their interactions with students. The results indicated that when teachers are using the dashboard with these predictions, they tend to spend statistically significantly less amount of time in close monitoring actions and more amount of time in scaffolding activities. Students also appear to spend less time in bored states, and there might be a positive impact on their learning gains too. However, the use of AI that directly intervenes in the practice of teaching and learning in such constructivist learning environments have significant challenges. These issues broadly relate to threatened human agency, the accuracies of predictions in social contexts, and the normativity issue of not being able to decide what is actually or eventually good or bad in a complex social learning situation. Of course, these also include well-documented issues of algorithmic bias, transparency, hallucinations of these models, as well as the accountability of these AI tools' decisions. But I think the challenge is even bigger than this. My issue is that I am not convinced if it is always possible to make a mathematical narrative or a model to predict how a complex social system behaves. Is it always possible to explain or predict all aspects of human learning and human competence development? AI was coined as a term in the Dartmouth College Summer School proposal in 1956, based on the conjecture that every aspect of learning and any other feature of intelligence can in principle be so precisely described that a machine or any other tool can be built to simulate it. Since then, we somehow live under the impression that if only we could find them, there would be formulas and models to somehow predict all aspects of human learning. Yet maybe to find out that to develop what such learning is, we have to go through the same irreducible steps as the system itself. Maybe some aspects of learning just come through the slow experience of living those learning moments. This itself makes the time spent on them more meaningful in the sense that we just can't jump ahead to get the answer with a prediction telling us what would be the most productive next step to take in this complex socio-constructivist learning environments. On the other hand, if we take the second conceptualization of AI as computational models for humans to internalize, they can be considered as opportunities to describe the learning processes in more precision rather than aiming for the potentially impossible task of predicting the future. As Seymour Papert famously noted, you can't think about thinking without thinking about something. In this sense, AI models can be objects to think about human learning. Here, you can see an example from our own work for the concept of collaboration, moving from the digital traces of audio data and video data processed with NLP and computer vision. Sometimes colleagues may get the impression that our attempts are for or only to build prediction models. If such an impression is taken forward, as the constructs are broken into small measurable components, more mechanistic measures of how much, how fast, or how precisely a component is completed may be prioritized. Here, in this example, as if one student keeps the eye contact for 1 more second, starts speaking with a peer 1 second earlier, clicking the resource button faster, or attempting to answer a question 1 more time, they would develop the expected competence in collaboration. For certain learning experiences, more and faster completion of a component, or even the more precise yet not flexible application of it may not lead to improvements in the quality of learning. Such measures are great for measuring the capabilities of machines, but not for all aspects of human learning. Therefore, in our work, we tend to take a much more modest goal of using these models for describing the lived learning experiences in more detail and precision, for making these experiences more visible to teachers and learners. We use these models to create specific and precise feedback opportunities to improve the awareness of the lived experiences of students and to keep them more motivated to engage in the future. Building on the same example above, these are the visualizations of speech time percentages and the types of group interactions each group is sent as feedback after their group interactions. These are the different types of group interactions students engage with during the timeline of the activity, and relevant feedback is provided based on these interactions for self-awareness and reflection. In my view, these models are tools for making sense of the phenomena being modeled, but they are not necessarily the mirrors of reality representing the complex process of collaboration. Of course, such models are not only limited to nonverbal interactions, and we have been working on models that detect speech in groups, transcribes it from speech to texts, and labels these texts with the group's challenge moments in order to be able to provide feedback on how to address these specific challenges. When we evaluate the value of such feedback for teachers and learners, they tend to find them extremely valuable in order to be able to increase their own awareness of the lived experiences, but also awareness of others in these complex socio-constructivist learning activities. The accountability of this awareness tends to influence both their engagement with the learning experience and potentially the regulation of their behaviors. Therefore, I argue that making the lived experiences of learning more visible and explicit with computational models still has significant value, regardless of any prescriptive advice from predictive models. Similar approach can also be useful potentially to improve learning theories as well. Now, this leaves us with the last corner of high automation and high human agency. The corner of human cognition being extended with AI in tightly coupled human-AI hybrid intelligent systems. I have not really talked about this much. I didn't have much time, but also mainly because we are yet to see substantial work in this particular space. At best, the current complementarity paradigm in AI in education is to make a better match of what humans can do and what AI can do with the problems to be tackled at hand in order to be able to improve productivity. The approaches are aiming to improve productivity rather than aiming to improve human intelligence per se. More commonly, for any given job, we tend to give up our agency to an AI system to complete a task for us, which in turn is expected to improve performance and task completion. We must be judicious in selecting the tasks we delegate to AI, as the over-reliance on AI could lead to atrophy of critical competencies in the long term. On the other hand, for AI models that are internalized by humans, the goal of the model would be to fade away, as humans' competence at the task that is modeled develops through their interaction with the model. At last, extending human cognition for intelligence augmentation in tightly coupled human-AI hybrid intelligence systems would require AI to be a synergistic superstructure on top of the human intelligence, in a way that this interaction with the tool, as the tool interaction increases, our competence at the task that is being modeled is also improving. Our interactions with AI systems are influencing us, and we are currently lacking long-term impact studies of these implications. In order to be able to achieve human-AI hybrid intelligence systems, we need AI models that are able to interact fluidly with us to understand our interests dynamically and change accordingly. The current progress with OpenAI's GPT-4 Omni model is a step towards the right direction, yet current AI systems still lack the ability to update their models based on the data learned through the interactions real time. Rather than pushing their predictions to us, human-AI hybrid intelligence systems would require interactions with AI models in which AI encourages us to reach our own conclusions by enabling us with the relevant information to the task at hand. I hope that we will be seeing more of these in our community in the future. Let us do not forget that the research in AI began as an attempt to understand our own intelligence, its atrophy, its augmentation, or amplification. Which goal are we striving for? When is it acceptable to entrust core cognitive competencies to an AI tool, and when might this pose too great a risk? What are the long-term implications of the tools we are developing and using in our own practice to our own cognitive competencies? As researchers and practitioners in education, we must exercise wisdom in answering such questions and consider also alternative conceptualizations of AI. To conclude this talk, allow me to reiterate some of the main points I was trying to make today. First, AI as an applied tool may be beneficial, but we should ensure that the use of AI makes people more competent rather than becoming more dependent on the AI. Second, AI solutions are not only closed engineering systems, but part of a large ecosystem. Therefore, significant ecosystem-level factors should be addressed for any AI solution to improve education, including infrastructure, governance, teacher training, and assessment structures. Third, although the current rhetoric focuses only on that, AI in education is not only about building tools. AI models can also be objects to think about learning and helping us understand and improve learning processes. In these explorations, we might come to the conclusion that some aspects of learning may only come through the slow experience of living these learning moments and can't be hacked with AI predictions. Therefore, perhaps not all aspects of teaching and learning should be directly intervened by AI. At last, although very exciting technical developments and significant achievements are emerging in AI, it is very unlikely that AI alone will solve any of the fundamental problems in our education systems. Applications of AI in education and the visionary direction in strategic policies must be informed by research evidence and multi-stakeholder dialogue. This conference here, Redesigning Pedagogy International Conference organized by NIE, is an excellent opportunity to form and conduct such discussions. And I look forward to finding out where the outcomes of these discussions will take us regarding the future of education. Thank you for the opportunity to share my thoughts with you.
Thank you, Professor Cukurova, for the insightful speech. Now let's proceed with the Q&A session. I would like to invite Dr. Alvin Lee, Education Research Scientist at the Center for Research in Pedagogy and Practice, NIE, to moderate the Q&A session with Professor Cukurova. Dr. Lee, please.
Good morning to one and all. My name is Elwin, and let's give the iPad some time to refresh, because I'm not an AI. So, okay. Thank you, our MC, Fahima, and also welcome to the question and answer portion of the keynote. My name is Elwin. I'm an education research scientist from the Center for Research in Pedagogy and Practice. I'm also very privileged to be Professor Mutlu's buddy for the last 3 days, so I've garnered so much information now that I feel like a sentient chatbot. So full of AI ideas now. Okay, so, wow, so many questions. Okay, I think we have too many questions, so we're going to concise some of the questions, and also given the limited time we have with Professor Mutlu, I think what we'll do is we'll set up a booth outside and start charging consultancy. Okay, okay, jokes aside, let us start with one of the bigger questions. Okay, so firstly, practitioners in the audience are actually from schools that have been using AI quite fervently in the last couple of years. Other than consideration of AI tools, are there other factors to consider, given your view on the current ecosystem?
So can you clarify the end of the question, please? Other than the...
Yeah, so the current ecosystem does require people to consider different factors before adopting AI. So other than just choosing the tools themselves, are there other factors that should be considered?
Yeah, of course. As I was trying to make the point in my talk, a lot of the adoption in real-world schools will be highly dependent upon factors that are not necessarily at the hands of individual teachers. There is significant influence, for instance, issues on the leadership buy-in, the governance within schools. And frankly, in many countries, a lot of the adoption is somehow pushed to the teachers rather than individual teachers are making their own decisions. To me, if you have the luxury of making your own decisions with regards to which tool and which AI to use, first of all, you're in a very luxurious position, and I think you should take advantage of this. When it comes to how to choose an AI tool, obviously it would be fantastic to consider at least 2-3 main factors. One of them is that I would strongly suggest for you to be able to seek out if there is any evaluation of the real-world impact of the tool that you are using. Because a lot of the tools that are currently out there are very much hyped without any particular evidence on their value for teaching and learning processes. This is not always the case because the technology moves so fast and it's very difficult to generate evidence, but we should be taking a lot more reflective stand while we are making these decisions. And the second major factor that I would say is that please do think, whenever you are using an AI tool, the extent to which this use will influence your own capabilities as an expert teacher. Whenever you are using a tool to provide feedback, for instance, think about the extent to which this tool actually helps you improve your own abilities to give feedback to students and the extent to which this is potentially leading to atrophy.
Thank you so much. And also speaking about, let's say, generative AI generated feedback from students, another practitioner-centric question here, which is what is your view on students actually replacing their learning with AI-generated answers? And also, how do we actually ensure that AI is used as an aid for student learning instead of just for the completion of assignments?
Yeah, thank you very much for this question, because this is a question that I have been pondering upon a lot, both as a researcher, but also as a practitioner myself. About 90% of my students at UCL are currently using these technologies to replace their assignment tasks. So my students currently can code much better in Python using these tools, but when we take the tools out of the equation, their capability of coding tends to be decreasing. So the best way, I think, to think about this is to think about the specific pedagogical approach that you want to implement in the use of these technologies. For instance, I do encourage implementations like inquiry-based learning, where you would not necessarily give access to the students before they generate their own solutions or before they generate and create their own hypotheses of a particular action, so that these tools are used as sense-checking tools rather than used as answer-generating tools. Think about the pedagogy that you would like to implement and use these tools sparely, wisely, not necessarily immediately to generate responses. This is very difficult because there is a very in-depth human propensity towards automation. So if we have the opportunity, we will be using these as a shortcut. So it is our responsibility, I think, as educators, to indicate the negative implications of these kind of use cases and set up the learning environment and activities and assignments in a way that the initial thinking and initial answer generation is created by the students before they interact with these tools.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Mutlu. And I think if the expert is worried, we should be too. And I think that leads to, I think we have quite a few questions regarding trust. And so the question regarding trust is this: in the current era of generative AI, is the issue of trust so much more pertinent nowadays? And do we envision a significant impact on AI adoption because of this?
Yes, is the answer, short answer to both questions. Trust is, at least in our research investigations, is one of the core concepts influencing the adoption of AI in real-world implementations. In our research, in explorative research, there is still a lot of confirmation bias, and there is significant amount of unexpected and unrealistic expectations from AI tools with regards to the teachers' trust. For instance, if the AI recommendations appear to be aligned with the initial thinking of a teacher, they tend to consider these tools as good tools because they are confirming what they think is good. That might be good or bad because some of the teacher ideas might be biased initially. There are also a lot of unrealistic expectations in the sense that whenever people see these tools are making an error, they tend to lose their trust immediately. Whereas if a peer, a human teacher peer, is making a mistake, then we are a lot more tolerant for peers' mistakes compared to the mistakes that are coming from these AI tools. So we expect these tools to work 100% accurately, which is not really realistic considering the modeling techniques that they use. We have to work a lot in order to be able to gain the trust of practitioners, and that would require significant approaches. Yesterday we heard about research practitioner approaches, and I think these kind of real-world connection and interactions will play a very significant role in terms of how do we gain the trust. One last thing, Alvin, I would like to say, when I talk about trust, people tend to have the impression that as if we are trying to gain blunt trust of people. That is not the case at all. It's more about optimizing the trust in the sense that You want people to be critical. You want people not to take all the responses, but you also want people to be able to judge and be more tolerant and realistic about what these tools can do.
Thank you so much. And I think on a side note, my wife supports my work in AI, but sometimes I wish there was some clarity also and some trust, because she will say, oh, you do AI, so it's fake, right? Because it's artificial. So, but you know, like, happy wife, happy life. So, okay, next question is regarding the future of AI in education. So, is it possible to predict and forecast what might be the next upcoming trend or trajectory that AI may have in store for us?
I'm very bad with predictions, so I'm not really. Please do take whatever I say now with a pinch of salt. I think we will be observing a lot more developments with regards to the interaction space. So how do we improve humans' interaction with AI? As we have seen early on, the GPT-4o is a significant advancement in terms of these issues that relates to latency in the interactions. And I think we will be observing a lot of improvements in these fronts. I am not sure how much improvement will occur with regards to the actual intelligence in these models, because to me, that would require a paradigm shift in some of the modeling techniques that we are currently using. The existing modeling techniques have inherent limitations, and it is very difficult to overcome these. So if I was betting, my bet would be on improved interactions with these systems with multiple modalities, but a lot of work needs to take place for them to actually make real-world impact in education.
Yeah, thank you. And I think due to time constraints, we do have one final question here. So with respect to Minister Chan's speech 2 days ago during the opening ceremony, he brought up the possibility of mass customization for the student population in Singapore with the aid of AI, and quoting from Minister Chan's speech and vision, which is the pedagogy of one. So he actually put it in simplest terms for the audience, is to refer to personalizing education for a child according to his or her needs and learning ability, and also paradoxically not about solitary learning, and rather is coming together as one community, blending physical and digital realms together to learn beyond the classroom walls. So what will be your view towards these comments and with regards to the vision that we intend to have in Singapore?
Alvin, you put me in a very difficult position. I knew that such a question would come up. Okay, let me maybe say a few words. First of all, I think Pedagogy for One has been used and shown in many research studies as a very effective approach for particular types of learning that relates to declarative knowledge acquisition, that relates to content acquisition. So it's very powerful, and I very much appreciate the vision of making this Pedagogy for One at a scale. I think it will be extremely powerful and useful for certain parts of learning. But as I was trying to highlight in my talk as well, learning is much more holistic than acquisition of declarative knowledge. So it will all be coming down to the extent to which we blend these Pedagogy for One approaches with more socio-constructivist approaches in whole school implementations. The video of the example that I showed is an attempt, I think, towards this direction, where you might be using certain parts of your classroom time doing this kind of content acquisition, but a lot more of the time should be spent on how do we improve students' lifelong learning skills and 21st century skills. These kind of competencies are extremely difficult, if not impossible, to be delivered with an AI system currently. So it was my understanding and my interpretation of the Honorable Minister who made these points that the goal is to move towards this direction of blending these approaches of Pedagogy for One for content acquisition with a lot more value-driven, holistic skills development approaches. And I look forward to seeing how this will pan out at a scale, because we do not really have good examples of such implementations at a scale. Singapore is a fascinating country to be able to reach this visionary state. The example that I have shown is one school, one private school that is coming from an extremely affluent background and providing education for those people who are coming from very high socioeconomic backgrounds. To me, one significant worry that I have is that these kind of pedagogical approaches will be implemented in certain parts of the world or within a country in certain parts of the community, and this will lead to widened gap between those people who are getting the most out of such approaches and some others do not have the same opportunities. Whereas in Singapore, I very much appreciate the fact that this is a whole country approach, and I really applaud the attempt towards this direction.
Thank you so much for the comments. And I think this wraps up our discussion with Professor Mutlu Cukurova. And also thank you to all our audience participants. There are many questions. As mentioned, if you have a booth outside, please find us. And also, we hope that we'll be able to build onto this body of knowledge even when we return for RPIC 2026. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Cukurova and Dr. Lee for the engaging session. Dr. Lee, you may return to your seat, and Professor Cukurova, kindly remain on stage, please. I would now like to invite Dr. Dennis Quek, convener for RPIC 2024, Associate Dean, Strategic Engagement, and Center Director of Center for Research in Pedagogy and Practice, NIE, on stage to deliver a token of appreciation to Professor Cukurova. The token of appreciation is a pair of gold orchid cufflinks that belongs to the botanic series of Orobianca, specially curated from the beautiful natural habitat animals or plants which resides in Singapore. Thank you, Professor Cukurova and Dr. Quek. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our final keynote of RPIC 2024. We thank all our keynote speakers and all participants for your presence. We will now have the morning tea reception. We received some feedback on vegetarian options yesterday, and we sincerely apologize for the inconvenience that it might have caused to some. Today's menu will have vegetarian options labeled with the letter V and veg on the label. After morning tea, the program resumes at NIE, which is a 10 minutes walk from here. We have also catered for some buses to take you to NIE. Buses will depart from 11 a.m. onwards. Please look for ushers with the yellow lanyard who will direct you to the pickup point. The first parallel session will resume at 11:30 a.m. Kindly follow the signs and arrive by 11:25 a.m. to ensure that our sessions begin on time. Changes to the sessions, if any, can be found on the RPIC website. Do take some time to check out exhibition booths and attend the poster presentations as you enjoy your break. There is also an NIE exhibit where you can find out more about our 4 research centers, NIE research publications, and speak with some of our journal editors who will be there if you wish to submit a paper to our journals. Finally, I would like to remind attendees that at 4 p.m. later, there will be a closing keynote panel at NIE Lecture Theatre 1. It's the last time we will be hearing from our esteemed keynoters and to have your questions answered. So see you later at 4 p.m. at NIE Lecture Theatre 1. Thank you, and I wish all of you a very pleasant and enjoyable afternoon. See you later.